The town of Maple Creek, Connecticut, on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-October, wasn't merely quiet. It was encased in a silence that had been polished and preserved. It was the silence of money, the kind that could afford space, privacy, and a comfortable distance from the world's chaotic noise. The crisp air carried the scent of damp earth from an overnight rain, of decaying maple leaves, and the faintest hint of wood smoke from distant stone chimneys where the season's first fires were being kindled. The light, weak and the color of Chardonnay, slanted through skeletal branches, casting long, fragile shadows across lawns manicured to the point of obsession. Here, on a low rise set back from the road by a long, winding drive, the Ashworth house stood as a testament to realized ambition. It was not some gaudy old money mansion, but a newer, more refined declaration of wealth. Ethan Ashworth had designed it as a glass and cedar cathedral to success. Its clean, horizontal lines and massive walls of glass blurred the boundary between inside and out, making it feel as though the surrounding forest spilled right into the living room. It was both a work of art to be admired and a fortress engineered to protect its secrets. Inside, the silence was amplified by the sheer scale of the space. Charlotte Ashworth stood in the kitchen, a minimalist yet opulent expanse where the afternoon light gleamed on calicotta marble. At 42, Charlotte was the embodiment of control. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight knot at her nape, not a single wisp allowed to escape. Her slender frame, the result of daily yoga and Pilates, was draped in a cream-colored cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored trousers. She was reviewing a detailed proposal from Sterling Events for Mia's 17th birthday party. Every detail, from the type of crystal to be used to the soft jazz playlist, was itemized. For Charlotte, planning was not a chore. It was a way to impose order on a chaotic world. She paused at the guest list, her finger tracing over the crisp printed names. Each was a link in the social chain she and Ethan had painstakingly forged since leaving New York. The Weatherlys, the Chens, the Prescotts. Names that carried weight in finance, law, and medicine. These weren't just friends. They were allies, strategic assets. A familiar, fleeting weariness washed over her. She remembered their cramped but sun-filled apartment in Soho, the nights they'd eaten Chinese takeout on the floor, dreaming of the future. She had been a rising young curator then, with a keen eye for spotting talent before the world knew it existed. She remembered the thrill of discovering an unknown painter, the electric buzz of a successful opening night. That life, that person, felt like a ghost now, a different version of herself who sometimes whispered of roads not taken. She had traded her career for this role, wife, mother, manager of the Ashworth legacy. A fair trade, she always told herself. Upstairs in her bedroom, Mia Ashworth was inhabiting another universe entirely. Her room was an island of rebellion in her mother's ocean of order. The walls were covered in her own charcoal sketches, brooding faces and gritty cityscapes, interspersed with indie band posters. Clothes were strewn over an expensive armchair. She was on her bed, laptop balanced on her knees, deep in a video call with her two best friends. "No way she actually said that," asked Chloe, her pink hair and nose ring vivid on the screen, her eyes wide. "Yep," Mia said, rolling her eyes. "My mother calls it social courtesy. I call it torture. I swear, she'd rather invite the entire school board than let you guys come over." Leo, the boy with the blue-streaked hair and kind eyes whom Mia was secretly dating, offered a sympathetic smile. "Come on, Mia. She just wants what's best for you." "No, she wants what's best for the family image," Mia corrected. "She doesn't get it. My dad doesn't get it. They live in this Maple Creek bubble and think the whole world works the same way. Everything has to be perfect all the time. She sighed, glancing around her room. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating here. Their conversation was cut short by a light but firm knock on the door. Mia, may I come in? Mia quickly snapped the laptop shut. Yeah, come in. Charlotte entered, and the atmosphere in the room instantly shifted, growing taut. Her eyes swept over the clutter with an almost imperceptible flinch of disapproval. I just wanted to finalize the guest list before I send it off. And so began the familiar argument, a ritual between them. Mia protested the inclusion of Caden Weatherly. Charlotte patiently explained the importance of business relationships. Is this party for me or for Dad? Mia finally burst out, her voice trembling with frustration. Do you ever, for 1 second, think about what I actually want? The question, in its raw honesty, struck Charlotte. For a moment, her perfect composure cracked. She looked at her daughter, really looked, and saw a stranger desperate to be understood. But the moment passed, replaced by defense. What I want is a good future for you. You'll understand that one day. Before Mia could retort, Charlotte's phone rang, a timely intervention. She glanced at the screen. Ethan. Honey, she said, her voice instantly modulating into the tone of a loving wife, a role she had played for so long it was nearly indistinguishable from her real self. The conversation unfolded exactly as she had predicted. He'd be late, an important meeting, difficult investors. He was sorry. He'd make it up to them. He had a special gift for Mia. He loved them. When the call ended, Charlotte felt a cold emptiness. She stood motionless in the hallway for a long moment. She could hear the faint thumping of indie rock from Mia's room. She walked downstairs, her feet silent on the thick Persian runner. The house was too big, too quiet. She found herself at the door to Ethan's study, a room she usually avoided. It was his territory. The smell of leather from his Eames chair and paper from the blueprints stacked on his desk enveloped her. Everything was methodical. But today there was a small disruption. The red folder she'd noticed earlier was still on the desk, a document half spilled from it, revealing complex charts and figures. She stepped closer, intrigued. She didn't understand what she was seeing, but she recognized Ethan's hurried script in the margins, words like liquidity pressure, urgent extension, high risk. A chill snaked down her spine. She turned away quickly, feeling like a trespasser. It's just work, she told herself. He's under pressure. That's all. To banish the unease, she sought the familiarity of the kitchen. She would make the mushroom risotto Ethan loved. She took out the ingredients, the sound of the knife chopping mushrooms on the wooden board a meditative rhythm. Step by step, saute the onions, toast the arborio rice until the grains turn translucent, then add the warm broth, one ladle at a time, stirring, waiting. The chaos in her mind began to subside, replaced by the focus of the task at hand. That's when the phone rang, an unknown number. She set down the wooden spoon, wiped her hands on her apron, and answered. A man's voice, formal and unfamiliar. May I speak with Mrs. Charlotte Ashworth? This is she. Ma'am, this is Sergeant O'Malley with the Connecticut State Police. I'm calling from the emergency room at St. Jude's Hospital. The man paused, a calculated silence to prepare for the impact. In that silence, Charlotte felt the floor beneath her shift. Ma'am, there was a serious motor vehicle accident on Route 95 this afternoon. A silver Mercedes. Charlotte's world narrowed to that voice and the frantic hammering of her own heart. Registered to your husband, Mr. Ethan Ashworth. The wooden spoon she was still holding slipped from her fingers, clattering on the tile with a dry, final sound. No, she whispered. a feeble negation against a truth that was bearing down on her like a freight train. There must be some mistake. He's just on his way home. Mrs. Ashworth, the sergeant's voice was softer now, but with an official firmness. Is there anyone at home with you? A friend, a neighbor? Is he okay? She screamed, her voice shattering into panic. Please just tell me if he's okay. The silence this time was longer, heavier. Charlotte could hear the frantic background sounds, the beeping of machines, urgent calls, a world of crisis into which she was about to be thrown. Ma'am, the man finally said, and in his voice she heard the truth before he even spoke the words. Paramedics did everything they could. The trauma was extensive. Mrs. Ashworth, I'm very, very sorry to have to tell you this. Your husband passed away at the scene. Passed away. The words meant nothing. They were for other people, for evening news reports. Not for her, not for Ethan. The phone slipped from her hand, hitting the floor without a sound she could hear. She stared at the risotto simmering on the stove, steam rising. The world, cruelly, kept moving. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed, the impact of bone on stone muted by a total, system-wide numbness. She opened her mouth to scream, but the sound was trapped somewhere between her lungs and her throat, a silent, agonizing pressure. And then, in that cocoon of silent grief, the strangeness began. It started with the cold, not the chill of an October evening, but a sepulchral cold, a cold that radiated up from the foundations of the house itself. It seeped through the floor, through her cashmere sweater, and settled deep in her bones. Next, the sound. Directly above her, on the second-floor landing, a single floorboard let out a slow, burdened creak, as if an immense weight had just been settled upon it. Then, the scent. A fleeting, impossibly real fragrance of Ethan's cologne. Sandalwood, leather, and a hint of bergamot. It was there for one breath, then gone, leaving a more profound emptiness in its wake. Finally, the image. Her eyes, blurred with tears that had not yet fallen, focused on the dark threshold of the dining room. And she saw it. Not a fleeting shadow. It was there, motionless, for one long second. A tall, masculine silhouette, crafted not from light or shadow, but from a distortion in the air itself. A void in space shaped like her husband. It had no face, no features, yet she knew who it was. She could feel his presence, his confusion, his pain. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying it would be gone when she opened them. And it was. But the cold was not. The days that followed were a waking nightmare. The funeral was a blurred performance. Charlotte stood, accepted hugs, and listened to platitudes. He was a wonderful man, if there's anything I can do. While feeling like she was floating outside her own body, watching a stranger play the part of the grieving widow. Mia was silent, a statue of ice, refusing all comfort. When the last of the guests finally departed, leaving the house reeking of lilies and a heavy silence, a new kind of crisis began. The emptiness. Every room echoed with Ethan's absence. His chair at the dining table, his running shoes by the back door. Everything was a reminder. A week after the funeral, Charlotte forced herself to perform a mundane act of survival. Checking the mail. She pulled out a stack of envelopes, most of them sympathy cards she hadn't the strength to open. But one, a cream-colored envelope, stood out. It was thick, heavy, and felt cold to the touch. The name of a law firm she had never seen before, Blackwood and Finch, was embossed in black ink. She left it on the marble countertop for 2 days, circling it as if it were an unexploded bomb. Finally, on a gray morning when she could no longer stand its silent presence, she opened it. The letter was brief, its language cold and impersonal. She scanned the legalese, understanding nothing, until her eyes landed on the final sentence. It wasn't just a sentence, it was a verdict. We therefore consider it imperative to schedule an immediate meeting to address the outstanding, complex, and considerable financial obligations of the deceased, Mr. Ethan Ashworth. Charlotte read the sentence again and again. The tragedy of her husband's death was not the end. She could feel it with a terrifying certainty. It was only the opening chapter, and their perfect house, their fortress, was not a sanctuary. It was the stage.